Low-quality fans of a high-quality Bruins franchise, welcome back. The trade deadline happened, and some of you might have heard about a fun little thing that happened. Brad Marchand is no longer a Boston Bruin, which, would be more palatable if, we got anything out of it. Let's talk about that. I want to go, I'm literally going to go from my least favorite trade to my favorite trade of the day. Because I genuinely think that this timing, this seller's market, everything like that was perfect timing for the Bruins for what they needed to do, which was a retool. They needed to gain some assets and gain some younger players, some prospects, things of that nature. I do want to make a blanket statement because I'm seeing people talk about how they didn't get any first rounders in 2025 and all this stuff. I want to be very clear about something. The picks that we got for the future drafts, the higher picks, the first rounders, things of that nature, they're likely going to be traded, right? Like, those are looked at as assets, and even if they're not traded, those players might be. They're looked at as assets to utilize so that Pasta's prime, McAvoy's prime, Swayman's prime, the guys that they look at as a pillar are still going to, it's going to be impactful during their tenure while they're still good, So I don't want everyone to hear like, oh, it turns into a 2028 first. Like, that doesn't do anything for us for 5 or 6 years. Yeah, if we were rebuilding fully and stripped it all down, then yes, you'd be correct. But that's still a weapon to use to gain more assets for that team, depending on once they identify how they're going to play and how they're going to move forward. Because right now, it does feel like there's a question mark of how they're going to play. So let's talk about this Marchand trade. I know there's a lot of feelings about it. We've already talked about the Trent Frederic trade and the Brazeau trade, so we're going to leave that mostly alone here. Brad Marchand goes to the Florida Panthers. Now, I think, and correct me if you think otherwise, that 40 to 50%, maybe 60% of the feelings about it and how angry everyone is about it is because of where he went. It sucks. If you gave me a list, you told me to pick a team that I'd be comfortable trading him to, they would have been 31st on my list. 31st. I would have rather him gone to Toronto. What do we get back is a second round pick in 2027 that turns into a first round pick in 2028 if the Florida Panthers make the conference finals and Brad Marchand plays in 50% of their playoff games. He is not expected to be ready for about 3 to 4 weeks. Now, your immediate thought here, especially after seeing the other deals, is, what the hell? You got nothing. It's not nothing, I guess, but it's compared to what else is going on. How this guy was supposed to be like the King's ransom guy. He was supposed to be the one that people were supposed to overpay for. How did Sweeney screw this up this bad? So there's a couple facets to this. I'm going to defend Sweeney a little bit. I don't like the way this happened. I hated the offseason. Again, this isn't just me being a Sweeney fanboy. I am going to defend him a little bit, but not fully. They couldn't come together and figure out an extension. Now, if the reports of it being 2 years, right, a 2-year extension that we wouldn't do, I don't know what the number was. But a 2-year extension that they wouldn't do feels a little weird, right? If the number was, palatable. If he's asking for 7 or 8 million, I'm sorry, man. You're 37, coming off several surgeries. I can't do that. But if it was, hey, I just wanted 2 years at the same I'm making now, that makes sense, right? Just do it. So we have to kind of throw that out. We also have to throw out the, was it 4 years? Because I wouldn't have done that. If he was like, I'm demanding 4 years or else I'm walking. Like, okay, then you're walking. And we're going to trade you so that we can get some sort of asset. There's also speculation that, Marchand had Florida at the top of his list of where he wanted to go. All three of those things those are different speculations. It's not fair on any end to make the assumption and make a decision based on how you think the trade should have gone based on that, which I do all the time. I'm not acting like I'm not guilty of exactly that. But At face value, the trade sucks. So Sweeney comes up for his presser, and he's talking about it, and he's talking about the difficulties of the injury and how that, that changed the outlook a little bit. And he kind of canvassed the league and asked who wanted to take Marchand. Who wanted to take Marchand? Not who was getting Marchand. Who wanted to take Marchand? We are retaining 50%. So there's that. It doesn't matter. It's at the end of the year that comes off. The retainment slot opens back up. But based on what Sweeney is saying, and I believe it, 3 to 4 weeks from Marchand being healthy, based on the return and the assumed, again, we're using the word assumption, lack of interest around the league for this, there were a lot of teams in a position to go, yeah, I can use a few million of my cap to kind of take a flyer on this guy. Because it sounds like his medical report was genuinely bad. Was like, hey, he might not be ready for the rest of the regular season. And then you go, well, Trent Frederick still got more. And he won't be ready until the playoffs, possibly. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that criticism. But if Marchand's not ready for the playoffs, and he might not be ready at all, like that's the other conversation part of this. This is an upper body injury that we don't have specifics on. If this is something where Florida's like, I'm not giving you real assets for a guy that might not play and then walks in free agency. Like, I'm willing to give you a second round pick. Sure. But like, I'm not giving you a first rounder for free. Because if this guy doesn't play and walks, I just gave you a first rounder for the idea of having Marchand. This one sounds like it was really difficult to navigate. I still don't think Sweeney did a great job with it. Right? Because you got such a low return. And there was other guys who were potentially not going to be ready till the playoffs who got more. It's just surprising to me. The other aspect of this, so the trade itself, not great, right? I think it's okay to criticize Sweeney for it. It doesn't look like a good trade. The other side of this is the conversation of like, well, then why trade him at all? Well, to get something? I mean, if you are of the mind, and we've talked about this already, but if you're of the mind that Marchand should have stayed a Bruin for his entire career, that he was on that level, that Bergeron level, that pedestal of like, I don't care what the return would have been. If it was 3 firsts and a great prospect, I don't care. I want Marchand to be a Bruin for his entire career. If that's where you are, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but if that's where you are, sure. Like, that's your feelings are valid and you're going to be upset about this. There's nothing I can say to correct that. Done. I'm not going to waste my breath trying to argue you out of that. But if you weren't, and you're not like, he has to retire a Bruin, the trade just sucked. It's something rather than nothing. It really is. I don't think he re-signs here in the offseason. I would be shocked if he did. But I think Sweeney went, you know what? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of trades to make. There's a lot of value coming back. I'm just going to move him. And we're going to see what happens, see who's going to pay what, and I'd rather get a second round pick than nothing at all. It's a shit trade. It sucks. And it's our captain. I liked the fact that Sweeney opened the presser with if he had done his job, then they would be buyers right now, not sellers. Good. Fall on that sword. Your offseason sucked. You should be embarrassed. I didn't like what he mentioned about leadership because it did feel like a little bit he was pointing at Marchand, being like leadership wasn't good enough. I also don't think the leadership on this team was good enough this year. I can agree with it and also think that Sweeney probably shouldn't have brought it up in that moment, right? Leadership has not been good this year. This has been an absolute travesty. And it with Coyle and Marchand now being gone, and Carlo, there's your leadership. It's a whole new look now. Like, who knows what it's going to look like. But at the end of the day, they opted to get something rather than nothing. They couldn't come to terms on a deal. And Marchand was not walking on holy ground, And it sucks. This is going to suck. I am not rooting for the Panthers in the playoffs. I'll root for Marchand. I'm not rooting for the Panthers. Now I kind of want to root for him to get to the conference finals, so it's a first-round pick and him to play 50% of the games. I guess I kind of have to in a sense, but other than that, no, I'd rather root for the Leafs, which we'll get to shortly. So it sucks. All of that sucks. Some absolute nothing trades. The Devils, Mark McLaughlin for Daniil Mazul. That's an AHL depth for an AHL depth trade. It does not matter. I'm not going to spend time talking about it. We traded a 4th-round pick in 2025 for Yoki Haru, who is a third-pairing right-handed defenseman. I don't love his game. I don't think he's great. I've watched enough of him, but that was just a, hey, we need a body to fill in on this right side because Carlo's gone, and we have Peak. We have Peak and Wotherspoon. And you don't want to force an AHLer up with who's not ready, or he's just completely outclassed. Like, yeah, bring in a guy, let him have some reps, whatever. He might sign back in the offseason cheap, might not, I don't know. But that's kind of another nothing trade. We'll watch him for a month and a half, and then we might never hear the name again. Who knows? The Leafs trade, which, genuinely, I think it's a great trade. I really do. We finally got confirmation on this, too. It sucks that it's in-house. It also sucks that I said on the Short Shift podcast that if the Leafs got Brandon Carlo, then they are winning the cup. I feel like I monkey pod this shit, man. I feel like I talked this into existence. Not great. Either way, we get a 2026 first-round pick that is top 5 protected. We get a 2025 4th-round pick, originally from Philadelphia. And then we get Fraser Minton, a forward. And they get Brandon Carlo at 15% retained. So that's a retainment slot for the next couple of years. It's like $800K or whatever. It's pretty inconsequential. Now, who is Fraser Minton? So depending on who you ask, he is a true prospect with top 6 upside, or he's a bottom 6 center. He is a 20-year-old left shot center, 6'2", 192 pounds, according to Puckpedia. He is on the first year of his ELC. He did play some NHL games this year, 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points in 15 games played. It looks like he did not get a ton of time on ice. He is, I believe, pretty great from the dot. I don't have these numbers in front of me, but Andrew told me that he's above 50%, so you like to see that. And he's cost control as an ELC, who will likely play in the NHL this year for the Boston Bruins as we move forward with all of our, or, whatever the rest of the season's going to look like. I mean, just 2 years ago, this guy was a very, highly regarded prospect. He had 67 points in 57 games in the WHL, which the WHL has a lot of scoring, so don't let those numbers fool you too much. This season, though, he's kind of struggling a little bit. He, in the AHL, for 26 games, he's had 13 points. I'm sorry, I keep glancing over at my notes here. But so he's 6 goals, 7 assists in 26 games, so half a point per game. Now, I mean, 20 years old, there's going to be some rough patches here or there. Well, all I know about this is because I don't know the prospect super well, so I don't want to say I think this guy's going to be a 2C or whatever. But this guy has real potential. He might just be another third liner, which looks like we're collecting them like the Infinity Rings at this point. Infinity Rings? Infinity Stones. But taking a guy with upside like this, 20 years old at a position of need, center, who potentially could be a 2C in this trade, and you also got a first rounder out of it, I feel really good about that. You got to remember that the reason they didn't focus purely on draft capital is because they want these players to help sooner rather than later. So you'd rather get a 20-year-old who's a year or two away from playing in the NHL and being an NHL guy, like full time, then getting a first round pick next year and it not paying off for the next few years. Now, obviously, there's a value judgment there where you go, that's still a better trade asset than this guy. There's a comparison to be made. But at the end of the day, you got a first round pick and a decently regarded prospect for Brandon Carlo, who you are going to move on. I think they have some concerns about the health stuff with Carlo, which I get. Carlo is also the biggest impact we have for next year, debatably. You could argue Marchand as well. But not having Carlo next year, if he's going to re-find his form, it makes the team legitimately worse, especially on that right side where we have very little depth, if any at all. So this one I do think is a really good trade for the Bruins. I think you've got some real value out of it. There's just some scary stuff to go along with it. And my favorite trade of the day is the Charlie Coyle trade. Love Coyle. It's a good soldier. It made all the sense in the world to trade him now. It's a down year. It's a seller's market, though. He has 1 more year, so he's cost controlled. The teams aren't paying for a rental. he's not going to be part of your future. Like, it's time, right? I know people got really hurt about this one, but it's time. We sent Charlie Coyle and a 5th-round pick in 2026 to the Colorado Avalanche, which means we get to root for the Avalanche. Love that. For Casey Middlestat, a 26-year-old center who's fallen out of favor over there, he gets $5.8 million for the next 3 years, so there's a real contract that we were eating there. William Zellers, who's a prospect, and a 2025 second-round pick. Casey Middlestat, when his game looks good, it's a really steady 200-foot center, right? Potential 2C kind of guy. Looks like that's not him. Looks like he's going to be another 3C, right? I think he's genuinely an upgrade over Elias Lindholm immediately. We'll see how that works out. But Casey Middlestat coming back. I don't hate the contract. I don't love the guy's game, but and honestly, not being able to perform with the talent that the Avalanche have, even with their winger depth issues, I don't know. That is a little damning. But bringing him back, fine, whatever. A second-round pick, I feel really good about that. If you told me the trade before I saw the prices of anything in this market was Charlie Coyle for a second-round pick, holy shit. Like, yes, absolutely. But we also get Casey Middlestat. Might have been a cap dump for the Avalanche for all I know at this point. I don't know how down they were on him. No, let's talk about the real good stuff. William Zellers. I like this a lot. A lot. He is in the USHL right now. He's an 18-year-old left shot center, 5'11", 170 pounds. He was picked 76 overall in the 3rd round in 2024 by the Colorado Avalanche. They had just traded Callum Ritchie, who was their best prospect, who I actually wanted in a Marchand trade. That didn't work out, obviously. So this year in the USHL, William Zeller has 40 games played. He has 37 goals. He has 21 assists for 58 points and 40 PIMs. Guy mixes it up. He is largely described as a quick, offensively gifted thorn in the side. Might remind you of somebody. There's real potential here. Most of what I've seen about him grades him out not to be like an NHL center. Probably a left winger, which is still fine. It's still an area of need, much like everything else on this team. For Charlie Coyle and a 5th-round pick, we got a 26-year-old center who, admittedly, I don't love his game, but he's also not an active detriment from what I can tell. We got a 2nd-round pick, and we got a prospect who is lighting up a league that's well known for its defense at 18 years old. And to kind of go off of that more, he is the goal leader in the USHL, like by a margin right now. He's 2nd in points at 18 years old. I feel really good about that, right? I feel really good. This is a good trade. This is a great trade. You get real talent. If you walked out of this without the Marchand trade, ignore that. And you're heartbroken about the guys we lost, because of course you are. We lost guys that we like. But if you walked out of there and you just went, holy crap, we got a 2nd rounder, a really good prospect, and a 26-year-old center for Charlie Coyle, and then we got a 1st rounder and a pretty decent prospect for Brandon Carlo, like, you would be super pumped about that. I think a lot of people are ruining some joy for themselves, which sucks because it's easy to do, because we love Marchand. Why wouldn't we love Marchand? Why wouldn't we be heartbroken? There's some really good stuff that has happened today, too. And the full breakdown, because thank you to Andrew on the Short Shift Pod for writing this. The Bruins, on the way out, Brad Marchand, Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau, Max Jones, Mark McLaughlin, a 2026 5th, and a 2025 4th. Right? On the way in, Lauko, Kuznetsov, Middlestat, Yoki Haru, Minton, Zellers, Wanner, Misule, 2 seconds, a 4th in 2026, a 6th in 2026, a 1st in 2027, and a 2nd in 2027 that possibly could become a 2028 first. Guys, that's not bad. That's really not bad. I know that Sweeney's taking a lot of flack right now for the Marchand trade. I think that's pretty reasonable. He broke a lot of hearts today, and you don't like the return on it. This is a good retool for the Bruins. There's real assets here that could long-term be very beneficial. It could also absolutely crater. We could be 2 years down the road because it looks like next year won't be the year of competitiveness. It looks like the following year is their goal, just based off of this. But there's a chance that we get to 2027 and we're sitting there going, didn't work. It didn't work. Like, we got to blow it up, and we got to blow it up for real. We got to trade Pasta at 30 years old for everything we can get. We got to trade McAvoy. We got to trade everyone. We got to strip it down and go full absolute rebuild. We're talking late teens Sharks, mid-teens Colorado Avalanche, whatever the hell the Ducks did for the past 6 years. Like, we are just blowing it up. That's still part of the roadmap, potentially. If this 2-year retool doesn't work out and all of this falls on its face, you just have to blow it the fuck up at that point. There's no real recovery there. But right now, you have the assets and weaponry to create a real team and potentially come out of it looking damn good with a 30-year-old Pasternak who's still lighting the league up, with an excellent right-handed defenseman, an elite right-handed defenseman in Charlie McAvoy. Like, that window could still be there. This was a hard deadline because when you're selling, you're getting rid of guys that you like. But that's what you have to do. It does suck. The Marchand one in particular really sucks. The Carlo one hurts. This had to happen. And this was the year. Seeing some of the returns, this was the year to do it. So maybe you're in the camp where you're like, this team's going to suck for 8 years. Maybe you're right. I don't like to be in that camp. Maybe you're right. But this is also what gives us a chance to not suck for 8 years. Had we just stuck the course and not sold, I don't know what next year's market looks like. You might have just dwindled your way down and just kept staying in the basement for a while with big contracts who you refuse to move. I don't know. This feels like the right move for the Bruins. And whether or not you trust Sweeney to do it, I totally get that. But this deadline outside of the Marchand deal, pretty damn good. The Marchand deal really does suck, though. Go Bees. Go Bees! And of course, here at the end of the video, I love to give some shout outs to the fantastic high quality inspectors who help support the channel and keep this running. I super appreciate every single one of you, from the role player tier, the top line tier, and of course the all-star tier. We are going to do our shout outs for this top line tier. Thank you so much to Sean Kreider, Michael Kammerer, Chris and Erica, Kevin Timperley, Quackin' Platypus, JM, Negev79, Lola Cattingsworth, EKM Productions, Moonlighter TV, Big Bad Bruin, The Bugman, Jeff with a G, Tommy Braga, Roland22, GD Viperworks, Len Kreutz, Brock Nope, Han Slobo, Coach D, The Atomic Lizard, Bradley Johnson, Brett Arney, Pincent, and Nick Zatrullo. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. Your top line material. But now we got to move on to our all-star tier members, the absolute legends. We have Jacob Pratt, Jake Brower, Dampen, JG's 12, Mark S., Ann Hustis, Lorenzo Wood, Penny Pasta, Levi Catalani, Boston Stringler, Bagel, Nightmare Eco, John Kirk, Joel, Heil E. Coyote, Darren Woodbury, Abraxion, Wolf Warrior, Vinny, Adrian Winter, Tupton D. Tashi, Bruins Smash, D.A. Kingery, The Only Newts, A Tasty Snack, Dutes42, and Jeremy. Thank you all for all of the support and love that you are all giving. I appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, go Bees!